thrilled to welcome the Decorative Arts Trust today to Castle Hill on the Crane Estate in Ipswich, Massachusetts. My name is Susan Hill Dolan. I'm the curator here at the Trustees of Reservations, Ipswich Properties, and the property we're going to focus on today is Castle Hill, the 165-acre property that is now a National Historic Landmark. As a little background to the trustees, we are a private nonprofit land conservation and historic preservation organization that was founded in 1891 by Charles Eliot to preserve and protect special places across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that have special ecological, historic, and scenic value. And Castle Hill certainly checks the boxes on all of those because it's a unique combination of natural landscapes and design landscapes, nature and culture that make it this unique spot. Castle Hill itself is one of 3 properties that comprise the Crane Estate. That is Castle Hill, Crane Beach, and the Crane Wildlife Refuge. So altogether that's a 2,100-acre estate surrounded by salt marsh and shoreline that is just one of the jewels of the crown, the Trustees of Reservations. So here we have Castle Hill, as I said, a National Historic Landmark. What makes it a sort of a national treasure is that it's one of the most intact country place era estates left from the early 20th century. It was the summer estate of Richard Teller Crane Jr., plumbing magnate. He and his family from Chicago. He's heir to Crane Company. The plumbing business, people think of Crane toilets. They really made a tremendous amount of money in the industrial plumbing, the valves, the fittings, pipes, elevators. So that's the Grand Crane Estate. Well, what you'll see when you come inside a little bit later is some beautiful Crane bathrooms that date to the house, 1928. The Crane Estate, Mr. Crane bought the property in 1910, so really there were 2 major building campaigns on the property, 1910 to 20, and then 20 to more like 28. So what we had at first was all this collection of really a dream team of landscape architects, and artists that designed the Crane Estate over the course of those years. In the first building campaign, he recruited the Olmsted Brothers to site the house and create the landscapes and their formal gardens. Shipley, Rattan, and Coolidge, a Boston architectural firm who had also designed the Chicago Public Library and the Art Institute of Chicago. They designed the first mansion on the site and all the extant outbuildings that still remain today. Later, in 1924, they tore down the first mansion and hired David Adler, the Chicago architect they had known from designing their winter house, actually on Jekyll Island, and he designed this great English country house style mansion on the footprint of that first house. So this is really just a summer home for the Cranes, and we'd like to show you a little bit of the inside and the outside of the house. But we'll start here on the exterior, and as I said, it really is reminiscent of the great English country house, the Stuart-style houses of Sir Christopher Wren. And David Adler, an eclectic and historicist architect, really drew on his grand architectural library to very cleverly combine 2 English country houses. So this south-facing facade is modeled after Belton House in Lincolnshire, but instead of the sandstone or limestone frontage, here we have this lovely pink Holland brick combined with sandstone trim in Flemish bond, and this beautiful multicolored slate roof, demarked with the sort of main block and dependencies marked off with sandstone coins, this very ornamental sort of virtuoso carved Queen Anne door hood above it. And really it draws on that lovely Baroque and Palladian symmetry, and Adler very much always had very much known for his symmetrical buildings. Some highlights, interestingly, these cast lead downspouts to the house. We'll remember these when we go into the library. They echo the fruit and floral motifs of the woodwork from Grinling Gibbons that's in the library. Also, it's very much built as an American industrialist's house. Even though it's meant to look like a late 17th century house, it's built like steel-framed, poured concrete floors, that's load-bearing bricks, all meant to survive. And with Mr. Crane had a fear of fire, so it really could withstand time and the elements here in the marine environment. What we'll do is also take a look at the north facade of the house, which mimics Ham House. So we always say, why have one English country house when you can have 2? Because David Adler could cleverly combine both houses. It's also a beautiful view as you look through it. You can see clear through to this lovely, the Grand Allée, we call it. It's a rolling lawn down to the sea. And here is where Adler designed the house after Ham House in Surrey, in Richmond, Surrey, and it's much. You see the niches with the 12 Caesars supposedly, although one looks suspiciously like George Washington here on the right, but it's all very much in keeping with Ham House. The cupola at the top of the roof is very much from Belton, but the rest really looks like that late 17th century facade that was built in the late 17th century in England. But the one thing that really does date the house to its own time, everything else is made to look like a late 17th century English country house, as this beautiful pair of griffin sculptures by the artist Paul Manship. Manship is probably best known for his Prometheus fountain at Rockefeller Center, the gilded one where everyone skates. But here he designed this pair of griffins that were commissioned by Manship from David Adler and the employees of Crane Company. So 3,600 former employees, much beloved their former boss, Mr. R.T. Crane Jr., and commissioned these griffins, which were sort of symbols of a combination of eagles and lions for courage, watchfulness and courage is what a griffin represents. So they were watching his new home in Castle Hill. And there's a little sign at the front. See the date, 1928, in affectionate regard for R.T. Crane Jr., 3,600 old employees of Crane Company have the griffins guard his home at Castle Hill. So very much in keeping with that Art Deco style, that streamlined style, as Manship was very much influenced by classical art, but here has them streamlined into sort of new modern works of art for the Crane estate. And here we are once again in the entry hall of Castle Hill. Adler was known for having really spectacular floors in his houses. So we have this beautiful black and ivory marble with inlaid Greek key around the edges. It's a very ornate carving at the top of the doorways here, all around. The English lantern. And then to each side was the gentleman's and the ladies' cloakroom. And I thought we'd let us peek inside the former ladies' cloakroom, because we have this beautiful antique Chinese export wallpaper that Adler, we assume, bought from probably either a dealer or an English country house and retrofitted it into the Crane estate. Very typical of a lot of English country houses to have these Chinese wallpapers in the room. And here he looked, from what we can tell from our research and our conservation efforts, he combined and cut up the patterns quite a bit to make it a much denser pattern than we've ever seen. So we see sort of almost decoupage on layer over layer, trees, birds, butterflies, to make them, this beautifully dense pattern that represents the 4 seasons. It's very beautiful. And we're in phase 2 of a large conservation project to do that right now. So we're very grateful to the trustees for funding this capital project for us. And we're working with conservators from Somerville, Studio TKM conservators, who should be finishing up at some point in 2021. And now we'll take us into the grand entry gallery. This is where visitors can come have a seat. Now we've restored the room to the way David Adler had it furnished, but one room we allow visitors to come, sit, relax, and start their tours. Adler had this wonderful combination of greens and reds in this room. We did a lot of paint analysis over the years, and we're seeing this bringing it inside out, a lot of blues, greens, and sands, which we'll see as we go through the house. The view through the room is of the Grand Allée, which was designed by Arthur Shurcliff. And to go with the first Crane mansion, that sort of Italian Renaissance revival I mentioned earlier, and the Olmsteds had planned to just have an open hayfield. The Cranes didn't agree and dismissed the Olmsteds of their services and had Arthur Shurcliff design this rolling lawn that sort of reminiscent of Bobley Gardens lined with statuary, which is 1/2 mile down to the sea. So really a lovely view of that from this gallery. And the gallery is lined with a lot of British naval portraits, mezzotins, busts, and also the crane technology in the house, a master clock and a master wind indicator system, which is connected to a weather vane at the cupola. So we'll have a number, you'll see throughout the house, these small weather vanes and wind indicators that the cranes have had. We're great sailors. So this was, again, their summer house. Now we'll go through to the rotunda, the circular room that connects us to what was the living room or drawing room, and go into the library. So the star of the show, really, one of the stars of the house, are these beautiful overmantel carvings by Grinling Gibbons. And the Cranes purchased the great library, the ornamental carvings and bookshelves from Castleberry Park in Hertfordshire, and that was raised in 1922. It may have been the inspiration for Adler choosing that late 17th century style of architecture, but these very rare to find in this country, these Grinling Gibbons carvings. Gibbons' dates were 1648 to 1721, and we noted that Evelyn mentioned these in his diary, having visited Castleberry Park. So these, we believe, date from somewhere around circa 1672. Originally, they would have been a bone white, a lime wood, that gave more of a cameo effect, but we believe someone in the Victorian era varnished them, so it gave this overall unified look. Not original to their 17th century look, but certainly what the Cranes had in the house. Along with that, the ornamental carvings around the room, the crown moldings, and the bookshelves here date a little bit later to the 18th century, designed by James Wyatt for Castleberry Park. One thing I will mention in the house is that in 1949, the Cranes gifted this property to the Trustees of Reservations, and the family had an on-site auction. Mrs. Crane died in 49. Mr. Crane had died earlier in 31. But the family took the pieces they wanted and auctioned off the contents of the house to benefit the Art Institute of Chicago. So really, the trustees acquired the house with almost nothing except the lighting fixtures and a few odd pieces. So my job over the last 25 years, along with my interiors committee, has been to try to restore the interiors of the house. So we've been working on that a very long time. A very dedicated group of volunteers that started that long before there was a curatorial position here, including buying books in 1953 to an Irish estate auction. So what we have here were books bought by one of our benefactors, books by the foot, 173 feet of books from Castle Killeen. It was an Irish peer family that owned this library, and he bought the books as well as the paintings. What was originally a lily above the mantelpiece is now the Countess of Fingal, so an Irish peer family, and some beautiful portraits that are period, but were not original to the Crane house. So what you will see throughout the house are some family pieces that very fortunately have come back to the house from the family within the last 3-4 years, and then some reproductions or other period pieces that we purchased to give the overall look. And the primary documentation we've had for that is that 1949 inventory, as well as photos taken in circa 1931 to 35 for Town and Country by Mattie Edwards Hewitt, an American photographer who did a lot of interiors in great estates in America. So between those things, and the auction catalog that was just auctioned off by Park Burnett in 1950, those things have really allowed me to work together to try to rebuild the rooms as they were. And having that inventory really gave us a sense of color, which we couldn't tell from the black and white photos. So we know in this room there were these henna rep, or these deep red wool rep draperies, these sort of suede or doeskin club chairs. We have the original desk came back from the family. A lot of damask, a lot of beautiful damask, silk damask throughout the house in reds, blues, greens, and then a lot of English chintz. This was a summer house after all, so a lot of beautiful, colorful chintz. This was a green chintz, and linen shades in a striped shade throughout the house to give it a uniformity and a summer house look. What we do use for textiles tend to be fabric houses that were selling things in that period of time, Schumacher and Lee Joffa. So they've been really wonderful about helping us restore the rooms. Oh, and yes, remember, I did say to you to remember when we looked at the downspouts of the house on the exterior, here's a picture of it just to remind you that Adler, being the stickler for details that he was, had these wonderful cast lead downspouts that reflect the Grinling Gibbons carvings, those beautiful flute and floral motifs, even at such places as the downspouts. But that also connects to sort of the crane technology of the house. Cranes being masters of water flow, they had these downspouts collect water from the house and have a 131,000 gallon cistern underneath the bowling green, which were the grass tennis court, and that would help irrigate the property. So in recent years, we've reactivated that reservoir of water and are now irrigating the Grand Allée, which was restored over the course of 3 years in 2010 to 2012. So follow me, and we'll go back through the gallery and show you where the crane dining area was. There's a mural in the rotunda as well as painting surrounding the clock and the wind indicator that show the 4 winds at each corner. And those were painted by a very close friend of David Adler. His name was Abram Poole. They were Princeton friends, and Adler actually designed his house in Chicago. Well, we do have some work by his friend Abram Poole. And again, a lot of period pieces that try to match, some reproduction seating area for our visitors, some traditional 18th century English mezzotins, and these Regent Street reproductions of these Regent Street pedestals with busts. And they also had a collection of wonderful, I mentioned the naval portraits. This happens to be one that we acquired at auction that had been deaccessioned from the MFA. That's a Richard Wilson. And Richard Wilson, very much known for his English landscape portraiture of the late 18th century, sort of the picturesque landscape. But here we have a portrait of a British naval captain. And every summer house needs a glorious dining room. And this room is in this beautiful green on green glazed green. We did our paint analysis to find this sort of celery with sage green glaze over it and restore the room entirely. And they also had this sort of tree of life pattern, ivory, floral pattern drapery, which we were able to find, a document print like that. And then fortunately, recently, 2 of the Crane granddaughters had been very generous in giving us some things back to the house, including this Regency pedestal dining table. And they came with a collection of 12 chairs, 2 armchairs and 10 side chairs, these lovely Chippendale chairs. And I can show you one right here that has, as you can see, the Chippendale splat back with these unique, that I have not seen before, these beautiful stag's head carved at the crest rail here. And they do retain their original ivory leather seats. So a lot of, being a summer house, again, we see a lot of the greens and ivories together in this house. And the Crane breakfast table, Queen Anne burled walnut breakfast table in the back of the room. And we have things that give the feel of what they have with these beautiful George III pedestals and urns at the top, and a beautiful, long, wide, 110-inch sideboard, very much in the size of what the Cranes had here. What they did have is this architectural salvage from yet another English house. And I'll point out some of the highlights here. As we walked into the dining room, I meant to point out right just behind me were these beautiful columns, these fluted columns, very bold columns, and then to work along the crown molding and pediments above the doors, also pediments and scroll work here alongside the fireplace. That is a marble fireplace, modeled after a design by Inigo Jones. These things were purchased from a London townhouse it was marketed by W&J Sloane as Hogarth House, because it was once believed to be the home of painter and satirist William Hogarth in London. So there was a 1732 townhouse, marketed, and David Adler recommended to Mr. Crane to buy this and split it up throughout the house. So very much in keeping with what was happening at many mansions at that time, people buying architectural salvage from English country homes. that were being raised. So this one had 7 rooms and a dining room and upstairs sitting room, all with this salvage integrated within. So here we have it painted green. Upstairs we see most of it without the paint on it, but we'll see that upstairs. But again, giving this wonderful combination that Adler was highly skilled at doing, eclectically combining. So we have this Baroque library, and yet in here, this more neoclassical Georgian style paneling and style that really reflects what's the outside come in. We see the green lawn, the blue sky, and it's all reflected in this room. A few things that did come back to the family that are fun here, actually in the painting cabinet. These wonderful Venetian glass champagne coupes. And we know these were from the family, and recent research has led us to find out that David Adler's sister, Frances Elkins, who worked very closely with him, she was a famous interior designer, and she lived in Venice for summers and was a big client of Salviati Glass Company. And here we see this lovely pale green with the dolphin, and we believe these were created for the Cranes to help outfit the dining room here at Castle Hill in 1928. Really fun. Here's one of the photographs actually that show you the room as it was, that Mattie Edwards Hewitt photos from the 30s. So we're getting close, trying to recreate that, the way they lived. And the stair hall, actually the stairwell itself was also from the London townhouse, but in a larger scale. The original staircase didn't fit, it was much too small, being a 1732 London house for this grand crane, the dimensions of this larger home. So they gave the original staircase to the Art Institute of Chicago and recreated it exactly as it was, but in a larger scale here for the Crane home. But again, that paneling, a glazed finish, this sort of glazed sand paint. We see the damask again on the Queen Anne side chairs. This beautiful, what's called Ipswich damask. It's a very large scale damask. A high chest and marble slab table recreated for the space to try to capture the scale. And take a peek also, the Cranes, as part of the servants area, is their silver safe that was in the hallway. And to continue what we see in terms of the servants, because people always love seeing kitchens and bathrooms, we're going to take a peek into what was the butler's pantry. So this lovely blue and white room was also researched, and we restored the original colors and patterns of these blue diamonds on all of the cupboards, the mahogany shelving here, drawers for all the utensils. And in the center was a warming table to keep that sort of an interim serving station room. So where the working kitchen was behind the Lazy Susan at the end of the room, this was the place where the plates could be lined up, kept warm, and then the signal to come into the dining room. There's a little glass window in there and a buzzer at the floor to have these things whisked away into the dining room when they were ready. But really fun. And what's interesting here is also a second tier. So the second tier for the fine china would be upstairs, and the more everyday china on this lower level. And a dumbwaiter in the corner, which could bring things upstairs for when Mrs. Crane wanted her breakfast upstairs or anything was desired upstairs. So now we'll go upstairs into the more intimate spaces, the family rooms and the guest rooms. This wonderful wide set of steps, sort of shallow steps. At the top we have a beautiful double splat Queen Anne bench in walnut. And above that is actually a painting by a wonderful woman artist, very successful artist in her day. Lydia Field Emmett was from a great family of women artists. Rosina Emmett Sherwood and Ellen Emmett Rand. She worked in Stockbridge. Lydia Field-Emmett here, capturing Cornelius Crane and his sister Florence in 1914 in their summer whites here at the Crane Estate. We believe this hung in their Chicago house, but we're very lucky that the family had gifted it to us recently for Castle Hill. But again, she worked in New York and Stockbridge, very much in the style of John Singer Sargent. People confuse this thinking that's a Sargent, but it's in that sort of that style of 1914 when the children were young. Beautiful carvings all the way up, paneling, pilasters, architectural vocabulary throughout. Really, you see over and over again the neoclassical elements, sort of this volute scroll. Again, the sands and the greens here with the draperies. The lighting fixtures are originally beautiful brass Dutch chandelier. Again, we see that Ipswich damask in the green. And in the cabinet is a collection of the original Wedgwood everyday china the Cranes had. They had adopted this little turret insignia on their Wedgwood china, their Tiffany stationery, and we see that throughout the estate as little symbols of Castle Hill. Beautiful Regency Girandole sconces here, too, flanking that. And then as we look down the hallway, we get this wonderful enfilade of rooms, and you really get a sense of Adler's use of different architectural styles. We have Gothic vaulting, Greek Revival lighting fixtures, sort of Adamesque fan lights above the doors, these neoclassical columns. So all very elegantly, combined with elegance, taste, sort of seamlessly. And Adler was particularly skilled at combining these elements. And we'll start in Mrs. Crane's bedroom to give you a sense of the family suites. But actually, first, before we do that, I do want to point out one of my favorite works of art in our collection. Actually, it's The Crane Family at Tea, a paper silhouette by Eveline von Maydell, done in 1926. And you can see sort of the parquet de Versailles flooring that's here in the Crane house with their son Cornelius, daughter Florence, Mrs. Florence Higginbotham Crane, and her husband Richard Teller Crane Jr., along with their chow dog and their cat. And it's just so delicately done. I mean, the veiling of the dress, the smoke from the cigarette, the cat's whiskers, the lilies, just beautifully, beautifully captured, and all within this Eglomise or reverse pane on glass mat all around it. So it's a wonderful piece that did come back to us from the family. And again, lots of detail. This wonderful fan light, very Robert Adams style, federal, very high style. So we'll have a series of rooms here. That was Mrs. Crane's suite. We'll first come into her dressing area, her dressing table. And as I mentioned, one of the highlights of the Crane house, of course, is the state-of-the-art Crane bathrooms. And David Adler, again, I think if his sister had anything to do with designing the house, this really has that look that sort of, she loved the moderne. She would introduce Jean-Michel Franck to America and sort of had embraced that combination of sort of modern and classical elements. So here we have this beautiful green and white marble flooring, checkerboard flooring, and as well as marble all around the tub and the sink, but also faux marbling, painted woodwork throughout. There's a closet on one side and a very discreet commode on the other. And then behind me here, the Crane bathtub. And this is really unique. I've not seen it before, this mottled green color. It was in 1928, was the first year that the Crane Company introduced colored tubs. So we know this was the year the house was finished. So they had a brand new colored green tub. And again, that beautiful marble above it with faux marble. And actually fun, this is also a family piece. That's a little bench here with her monogram, Florence Higginbotham Crane, embraced with a C and the little cranes here, which is quite fun. So we'll go through her dressing area. and into her bedroom. And Mrs. Crane's room is one of the other bedrooms that have the London townhouse architectural salvage. Here in this lovely soft sort of pickle pine finish, but Adler used finishes and paints to create. Beautifully done. And her room was highlighted by a lot of English textiles, particularly needlework pieces. Her bed hangings and draperies were all crewel work. We found a pattern that looked very similar to what she had in the room. And then she had a wonderful collection of stump work. So English, a lot of 17th century stump work. Here is something we had purchased at auction that looks very similar to the kind of thing Mrs. Crane had in the room. Judas and Holofernes, a beautiful piece in a period frame. So we're in the process of collecting a lot of those lovely needlework pieces to give a sense of the collection she had in her room. Here we have on loan a beautiful pair of George I side chairs, and an original piece from the family here. The late Queen Anne, early Georgian burled walnut chest on chest. Absolutely gorgeous piece, original to the room. And a Queen Anne, early Georgian drop front desk here. Again, some more needlework behind that. And above the fireplace is a John Singer Sargent charcoal portrait of Mrs. Crane done in 1919. We found a lot of that era Sargent turning to doing charcoal portraits, a lot of society portraits, and Mrs. Crane was certainly a great society woman. Her maiden name or birth name was Higginbotham. Her father, Harlow Niles Higginbotham, was one of the presidents of the Great Columbian Exposition of 1893. So very much a prominent family in Chicago. He was also a founding partner in Marshall Field and Company. So we'll come through to what was Mrs. Crane's, or the family sitting room. And it's a very intimate upstairs, unlike some of the Newport mansions, which are much more over the top and large in scale. This has a grandeur, but also an intimacy to it, a very much more human scale here on the second floor of the Crane estate. This, as I mentioned, is the upstairs sitting room, and this probably has the best example of the ornamental carving from the London townhouse. I think every form of architectural vocabulary you could put up there, they did. And you'll see the egg and dart and the dental work, all these beautiful bead and work, and the pilasters or the fluted columns, Corinthian columns, and all just surrounding this beautiful marble fireplace, all from that London townhouse. What I particularly love is one of my favorite pieces that has come back from the Crane family is this early Georgian burled walnut secretary bookcase, and it integrates those lovely sort of pilasters in the furniture that echoes what we see in the room. And in this room, we've really tried to also recapture the room the way the Cranes had it. The draperies are actually the same pattern they had, which is still made to this day, one of Lee Joffa's most popular patterns, the hollyhock pattern in this pale green blue colorway. They also had a trumeau, and this is a recent acquisition that we have, which is a combination of a mirror and a painting all within one frame. So this is a period piece, circa 1725, purchased recently, an English landscape with a beveled mirror, very much in keeping with what the Cranes had in the original sitting room. We have a picture of that in the corner. And we try to have the pictures on display so people get a sense of what it really looked like and how much it looks like that today. And now we'll go across through this little narrow hallway here. We'll go into Mr. Crane's bedroom. And Mr. Crane's room, again, really stunning architectural salvage. The overmantel, this whole wall, are actually surrounding the mantelpiece, and the marble mantel itself with this beautiful leafy swag here at the center, all came from the London town, the Hogarth house, the London townhouse. Here, a little secret bookcase behind. It was during Prohibition, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but there's little secret compartments, a little bookcase behind there. Wedgwood agate ware urn, very much like what the Cranes had found at auction recently. And also, again, this paneling, a lot of reds and browns, much like the library, has this more masculine sort of red and brown design to this room. One of our favorite rooms, actually, as it should be, at the Crane house of Mr. Crane himself, is his lovely Crane bathroom. Really a stunning room. There you have marble floors, wainscot, this lovely black Italian marble on the sink, and all around the wainscoting, the white marble floor. Very bold, very masculine, and I love the architectural mirror, the medicine cabinet with mirror, flanked by these elegant sconces. Again, this was Mr. Crane's room with the industrial strength towel rack here, warming rack for the towels. A tub in the center, which had the view of the sunrise, so it must have been like a tub with a view. And flanking the tub, 2 doors. This is a multi-nozzle shower stall, all silver-plated fixtures in all of these family bathrooms here, with marble inside. So it's not something new to have multi-nozzle shower. These lovely glass doors, an archway, and then a discrete toilet on the other side. So really, and even the door surround is completely done in marble. Very elegant. We have actually some Crane ads and some little ephemera here. The back of a period magazine with Crane bathroom ad, and one of their catalogs for their valves and fittings. And some family pieces in here as well. This little chest at the end of the bed, and this lovely George I slant front desk that came back from the family, as well as the looking glass. So the next suite will be daughter Florence's suite. Mother was Florence Higginbotham Crane, daughter was Florence Crane. We'll cut through this little passageway, which is Mr. Crane's dressing closet. So we'll start with her bathroom, which is really elegant as well, but with this unique tiling I've never seen in any other bathroom, which is this églamisé, or the reverse pane on glass, with silver ships and this sort of pale green and deep aqua blue trim all around them. And little connecting of these beautiful silver stars all through the room. Again, the silver plated fixtures, the tub. The women's bathrooms only had tubs, not showers. The mahogany flooring. They had a lot of little hook rugs on the second floor, sort of a little nod to the Americana. White marble sink. Very signature to David Adler. You may have noticed in Mr. Crane's room with these solid glass legs. Very typical of that era, very sleek and sort of state-of-the-art 20s, art, sort of precursor to Art Deco as well, and very popular again today. And then the children, I don't know if you can see here, it's a little dark, we're getting late, but is her sitting room, the sleeping porch, excuse me. So I think this is where I would take my coffee or my gin and tonic at the end of the day. Sit out here on this porch with this gorgeous view of the beach, Crane Beach, which is a 9-mile barrier beach, and just soak in that gorgeous atmosphere. So both Cornelius and Florence, the children's room, have these wonderful sleeping porches off them. And then we'll loop around back through the bathroom and to the bedroom. So this was the bedroom of Miss Florence Crane, was born in 1909. So she was quite young when this was completed. But again, this room has sort of this English country house, but this one of all the rooms has this sense of Hollywood glamour to me. A little bit different with the swag drapery, very elegant. Even the crown molding in the room has a streamlined look that's more Art Deco. So a little bit different than the other rooms in the houses. But as looking out, you have that same embracing of the colors you see outside. So it's the blue and the sand, so this lovely pale blue in this room with the sand-colored walls, again glazed painted. She has these lovely Bristol blue glass knobs on her closet doors and her doorway. Mantelpiece. It's actually some photographs of Florence. It's very elegant, mixed media portrait of her that's like a Lauren Bacall look, just beautiful. And another fun piece that just came back from the family actually is a portrait of her. In 1926, they did a family trip to Europe, a very long trip, and had been in Egypt, which she fell in love with and just loved everything about it, but then was in a junior league show in Paris and was dressed as Nefertiti. So this is Miss Florence Crane, young Florence. Her mother wanted to capture her in that costume. Not something we'd necessarily do today, but a really beautiful portrait of their daughter, profile shot in this cleverly disguised as Nefertiti in what was her costume at that time. So if you'll follow me now down the hallway, we'll take a peek at some of the guest rooms along the long hallway, and then end up in her brother Cornelius Crane's room, which has a suite which will take us to the roof. There's a picture of the family actually in the rose garden, one of the earliest color photographs of them, done in about 1913 in the rose garden. And this was the Chinese guest room. This had this wonderful Chinese wallpaper. This is actually a reproduction using some fabric from Brunswick and Fee, actually, that was put on here many years ago, but it really looks the part. Very elegant room. This little bay, or sort of a sitting area for the guests, where the guests from the various guest rooms could come and sit and enjoy the view of the alley. The oak guest room was fully paneled in oak paneling, over mantel, sort of a yellow silk. And then the last bedroom suite on our tour is of son Cornelius' suite. And I'll just pause here on the way to show a wonderful picture from 1911, and it shows the first Castle Hill Picnic Day. Cornelius was born in 1905, and he was here for the Cranes bought the property in 1910, had their first summer here in 1911. He was 6 years old with all his friends in Chicago and not in Ipswich. So what they did was invite all the school children of Ipswich. For Cornelius' birthday was June 29th, and they had them come down to the beach for a full day of swimming, for lunch, picnicking, and enjoying the day out. And they would ship them here either by barge or boat or by barge. And what's nice is the Crane family developed a fund for the town of Ipswich, so this tradition continues to this very day. So this would have been the 110th in 2021 anniversary of the Crane Beach Picnic. So it's really a lovely tradition that the Crane set up in honor of Cornelius. And he has the Parquet de Versailles flooring that was also in the gallery and the dining room that carries up to Cornelius' suite. And Cornelius' room was one that we had done paint analysis in early on, and we found the sky, sea, and sand, which is the view when you see out the windows. On a clear day, you see this lovely, same, very similar color of the ocean blue with the sky and the sand. And I'll point out this wonderful portrait of Cornelius Crane. This is him as a young boy, about 19 in 1919. It was by an artist named Jerome Bloom, a Chicago artist who was post-impressionist, had studied in France and loved the work of Gauguin and Matisse. but also had this sort of fauvist sense of using colors and almost a Modigliani type of long face to Cornelius, with a beautiful portrait in its original frame. So we're fortunate to have that from the family. And a pair of David Adler club chairs, not from this house, but from another house called the Wheeler House that he designed in 1934, but again, to give you the sense of that sort of Deco-era club chair that was very comfortable, modern comfort combined with sort of English country style. And original crane desk and tub chair, and that blue leather. It was all sort of blue and white resist print fabrics in the room. Mantelpiece, marble mantelpiece. Above the mantel, even though that may look a little modern, it's because Cornelius Crane married in the late 50s a Japanese artist, Mine Sawahara Crane, a very famous artist in her own right, musician and artist. And she had this lovely naive, sort of folk art style combined with Japanese linear style and sort of dreamscapes and sort of imaginative subjects. So here we have a unicorn. A lot of them were based on her experiences at Castle Hill and a love of nature. So this was one we highlighted to show Cornelius' wife's work. And this is one of these, actually, to point these out, there's one in the hallway and in 3 bedrooms. This is a wind indicator that was made by Lord Electric Company of Boston. Again, incorporated that crane technology. That large master wind indicator in the gallery is connected to the weather vane on the roof, and then the individual ones were in various rooms, and the lights from behind that face would light up the direction of the wind. And this gorgeous sort of Art Deco style pattern and design to the face. This is one of the ship models. Cornelius Crane in 1928-29 did a Crane Pacific expedition with scientists from the Field Museum, and it was a year-long anthropological expedition and brought back some 40,000 specimens, which are still at the Field Museum, of animals, flora and fauna. We'll see upstairs in the ship room another ship model of his with some of the artwork from that trip. And Cornelius Crane's bathroom is a real stunner. It's the Delftware, blue and white Delftware tiles. The men's had the shower, so he has this lovely shower stall with a design. Actually, we have an old National Geographic of that very style of Eternia that was marketed by Crane Company. And again, sort of the glass lake sink and the glass and sterling silver-plated fixtures in the tub. And this lovely sort of children at play reproduction of Delftware tiles. But they are period to the house, say 1928. Very elegant. Yeah, there's the sort of Crane advertisement that shows that very style that's here in Cornelius' bedroom. So as an extension of Cornelius Crane's suite is what we call the ship room on the 3rd floor. So that will be our last stop on the tour, which actually takes us to the roof of the house, which is a very special treat. Here it's getting a little dark, but we'll find our way up to the roof. And here we have some enlarged photographs of the interiors of his yacht, the Illyria, the dining room, bedroom, living room, and the china that was custom made for the yacht Illyria. It was a 147.5-foot brigantine yacht, an enormous boat, but was outfitted with a scientific lab on it. It was a really comprehensive yacht for such a scientific expedition. And that's Cornelius with the ship captain. There's this sort of lovely Maiolica or Delftware urn that was created for the property. Again, that little turret I mentioned that we saw in the Wedgwood China, we saw again, and I believe this was probably from their first house, that sort of Italian style and it may have been out in the gardens, but we found that and had it restored for the property. And this is the third floor, what we call the ship room, or what Adler's plans call the ship room. And we think it had nautical charts and was just sort of an extended living area for Cornelius's suite. Sort of the spiral staircase at the center takes us up to the roof of the room. Oh, and here, I'll just point out one more thing. This is the Illyria ship model with the sails up. And some of the artwork around the room were done by an artist and ornithologist named Walter Weber, who was one of the scientists on the trip. So we're really lucky to have all of this large collection in the trustees' archives. So our last stop was follow me up the spiral staircase. And a bit of a misty night. We're not getting the full view of what you might see, but you'll have to come and see it in person because the ocean and the Irish Shoals are straight out to the north, great blue sea. It's 9-mile barrier beach, Crane Beach, all part of their private estate at one point, so Crane Beach, still a very popular, wonderful beach to go to, really one of the most beautiful on the East Coast. You also get a sense of the beautiful silhouette value of the chimneys and the roof atop the house. And it's really a 360-degree view, beautiful view of Ipswich, Newburyport, Rockport, Gloucester, and Essex. And really, even on a very clear day, you can even see the towers of Boston in the skyline. But I mentioned the three components of Crane Estate being Crane Beach, Castle Hill, and the Crane Wildlife Refuge. Just off beyond us here was part of the 5-island Crane Wildlife Refuge, which was left to us by Cornelius's wife, Magnate, having inherited that, and it still remains today. It's a wildlife refuge. The movie The Crucible was filmed out there, like sort of early New England. It's worth watching because you get a sense of that from that movie. But at the top of the hill there, Cornelius and his wife Magnate are buried. That was their favorite spot. They had hired architect Royal Barry Wills to design a 1940s cottage for them out there. He had done that before he married Magnate, but that was their favorite place to go to. So really, it's paradise up here, and we're very, very lucky. So that concludes our tour. I know it's a lot to take in and a lot to see, but you'll have to come back, completely enjoy the beauty of the nature and the culture that makes the Crane Estate so special. And we very much look forward to welcoming the Decorative Arts Trust when they come in the fall of 2021. Thanks so much.